All right, we are back here recording on Black Monday on the NFL season. There has been one job change for the New York Giants. Another one we don't quite know, but joining me today to talk about it all is a very disgruntled Giant fan. You heard him rant a few times, including his appearance in the clip show of the year-end holiday special. Justin Diaz here in video form. Justin, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure. It's unbelievable how many I've been on this. How many times do you think I've been on? 5 or 6, maybe close to 10 actually. And over the span of 5 or 6 years, and every single time it's still horrible news around the Giants. It just doesn't change.
Oh, absolutely. And just to catch the audience up where we are, we're recording on Monday night on January 10th. The national championship game is on in the background. And just to time check this for the audience here, we are in the second quarter of the game. And I believe Alabama is up 9-3. So, 9-6. Excuse me. Georgia kicked the field goal. But here is what we know about the New York Giants situation as of right now. Dave Gettleman has retired, quote unquote, and he's no longer the general manager of the Giants, which will make the Giant fans happy. But as of right now, Joe Judge, we think, is still the Giant head coach. Last we heard this morning from CBS Sports, Josina Anderson, that sounds like he's going to stay. Then we heard, he's meeting with the Maras and Mara and Tish. The meeting got pushed back. He met with his players. The players are the media. It's just a mess today.
It's a disgrace. I mean, calling it. So I've heard people say he retired. It doesn't matter how you frame it. He's no longer employed. It's a disgrace to the name of the organization. And basically it says the Maras are saying you could be historically inept, absolutely leave zero positive things for the organization going forward. But if you're friends with the owner, we'll make sure we don't hurt your feelings on the way out the door. He was taking pictures on the field with his freaking family yesterday. That's such a slap in the face to the fans. The guy finished with a 29% winning percentage. He's the worst general manager in team history. And they waited till the end of the season to announce a BS retirement because they were concerned about his feelings. Like, you can't make this stuff up. Other organizations in sports don't do these things. Other organizations are inept. There's certainly other bad organizations out there. I've never heard of one saying, we're going to wait until the end of the season because we don't want to hurt the guy's feelings. We want to let him retire. And this has been known for weeks. Gettleman's gone, but he's going to retire. It's just so, it's hard to even put into words how upsetting it is, because it's that the action itself, letting Gettleman retire as opposed to firing him, tangibly, it doesn't make that much of a difference because a new GM will be in place. But it's the mentality of, you're running a business, you're running a sports team, but you're running it like a boys club, like where you have all these old guys that are like, well, we got to stick out for one another. Like, no, you don't. Gettleman's a joke. Man, how I feel about Gettleman. I have so many rants about him ever since the Saquon pick. It's so upsetting. I'm glad he's gone, but it bothers me a lot that he's not held accountable. Like, it'd be like when Wells Fargo had the whole banking scandal where they're opening fraudulent accounts, and their CEO, who was like from the top down, was directing people to do these things. If the board said, we'll just frame it as a retirement, it's okay, it doesn't matter, he's going to be gone anyway, right? I don't know, how would the public perceive that? Well, so that's how I feel about this guy letting Gettleman retire. It's so I wanted to curse, but I bit my tongue for the sake of keep this PG.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to go through this here, the last 48 hours in particular, because the Giants know have been bad for a long time, but the last 48 hours sort of have this sort of, curb your enthusiasm, like vibe to it, where it's just, like, what can possibly, like, how can they embarrass themselves next? It sort of feels like what's going on here with the Giants.
It's unbelievable. It's changed so fast. So I will say, I've been, not to pat myself on the back, I'm wrong many times when it comes to sports. I have been saying for years they're a hopeless team, and it was so long where every offseason their roster was so bad and it was so obvious they were going to suck. But if you said that to most Giants fans, say, no, we have X, Y, and Z, they're just delusional. But you knew they were going to go 4-12 to 6-10, something in that range. People talked themselves into a successful season. It took people a long time to realize the Giants had become one of the inept, hopeless franchises, because they've had relatively recent success. When you compare them to the Lions, the Jets, the Browns, the Jaguars, the Giants are in that class. The Browns actually stepped out of it to somewhat of at least they have a chance of being average. But every single year, no matter what, the Jaguars are going to be terrible. No offense, Mike. The Jets are going to be terrible.
Terrible.
The Lions are going to be terrible, and the Giants are going to be terrible. And now that it's become so comically bad, everybody sees it except one person, and that's John Mara. I think Joe Judge even knows it. I mean, he probably is like, he probably, I don't know if he's married. I'm assuming he is. He probably goes to his wife and always like, I can't believe that this guy believes it. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. It really is a clown show out there.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring up the outside perception of the Giants. I remember prior to the season, this is something I also had in the holiday clip show I kept on the soundboard. I had Sheil Kapati of The Athletic on. I asked him to talk about the Giants preseason. And this is back when they were talking about, we're going to win the division this year. Like, the division's bad. We did all these moves. And I asked him about the Giants. Why don't you listen back to what he had to say? And so this ended up being pretty prophetic for the Giants.
Yeah, I'm not bullish on the Giants this year. I don't see them making any type of major leap. They were sort of the winners of the offseason in a way, with Kenny Galladay, Adoree Jackson, bringing back Leonard Williams. But if you look at it, their offense, they look like they have on paper a bottom 5 offensive line. They very well could have a bottom 5 play caller, offensive coordinator in Jason Garrett. And Daniel Jones has certainly flashed at times, but he has more fumbles than any other player in the NFL since entering the league. And so you add all those things up, and I think that's a lot to overcome for them to become sort of even a top 10, top 15 type offense. I just don't see that happening. And defensively, I thought Patrick Graham certainly did a good job last year maximizing the talent at his disposal. I just don't think they have a lot of talent. Certainly Leonard Williams is a very good player. They don't have a lot of edge rush. We'll see if Adoree Jackson can stay healthy. And so I think they'll be a fine defense. I would say maybe mediocre to slightly above average, but you add all those things up, and I think they're probably going to be a below 500 team.
If I had a hat right now, I'd just tip it to Sheil right now, because he nailed the entire season in about a minute and 15 seconds.
He really did. He hit the nail on the head. Galladay turned out to be a complete disaster. It's that nothing worked. Nobody's really defending the Giants at this point, but if anyone says, well, Daniel Jones got hurt, your starting quarterback getting hurt is certainly going to make you worse. I'm not saying anything that's not rocket science. That's not an excuse to then become a historically inept offense. They had -10 passing yards one game. that sounds like a typo, but it's true. I think they threw for 27, but then when you account for sacks, there's -10. That's backup quarterbacks are supposed to be able to come in and run a somewhat competent offense. There's going to be a drop off, but to not be well, I'm sure we'll get to the QB sneaks at some point. But
we will.
To not even put up some semblance of a competent offense, that points directly to awful coaching. Look Sean Payton was dealing. Jameis Winston's not that good to begin with, but he gets hurt. They're dealing with Taysom Hill and Trevor Siemian, a gadget quarterback who's not really a quarterback, and a really pretty bad player. He's a backup journeyman, and they still managed to win 9 games. Tyler Huntley with the Ravens, they stayed in every game. It's coaching again. Like, if Aaron Rodgers gets hurt for the season, the Packers are not winning the Super Bowl. But I bet you they would find a way to run a competent offense. That good coaching overcomes injuries to an extent. The Giants, they were bad with Jones. When he got hurt, they looked like they looked like a bad high school offense, not even like a good one. It was absolutely disgraceful. I'm sorry, I already forgot his name, but the clip he just played, he really hit the nail on the head with this season.
Yeah, Sheil Kapati of The Athletic, and I want to give him credit for that once again. And I will also say, I forgot my medium soda. I was making a plan to go buy one before the podcast. I forgot to grab that. I wanted to have it on hand. I did not bring that with me. I also did not have all my rant clips still from Joe Judge last week. That was the game where he had -10 passing yards against the Bears. And it's just you're right. It's just frustrating because you watch that offense, and the loss of the quarterback stinks, but they should not be going from mediocre offense to an offense that could barely outscore the Somers football team in high school here. That's
I could Westchester through that.
Yeah.
It was just so it's hard to even come up with a realistic, reasonable defense of Joe Judge and say this is why we want to bring him back. I mean, historically bad offense, just a mediocre defense, horrible game management. He doesn't. I don't think he understands modern football. I really don't. Like the QB sneak 2 plays in a row on the 4-yard line where he basically might as well have kneeled it. Just to think that's okay in modern football that you play for the punt. You don't deserve to coach the NFL in today's league anymore. You lose that right at that point. Like you don't understand football, today's modern football. You just compare that to the Patrick Mahomes led Chiefs or Justin Herbert on the Chargers or any modern football team where at any explosive offense, they can take the top off the defense and score an 80-yard touchdown. The Giants, they're not even trying on second or third down. It's like they're not even playing the same sport. You should, as an owner, you should be striving. This is going to sound corny. You should be striving for greatness. Like the Rams, I've probably mentioned the Rams in my previous appearances. They don't settle. They made the Super Bowl with Jared Goff. Jared Goff's obviously not good, but imagine if the Giants if they made a Super Bowl with a quarterback, that guy's going to be the quarterback for the next 20 years. We actually saw that with Eli, but the Rams knew it was a mirage. They could improve. Teams like that are always looking for a new edge, a way to improve. The Giants are looking for every excuse in the book to keep things status quo. Even if status quo is 4-13 and your coach is calling for QB sneaks on 2nd and 3rd and long, for some reason that's more comfortable than change. Until they embrace change, they're never going to change. They're never going to improve. We're just going to see this year in and year out. And at this time next year, with Joe Judge, it's literally a matter of when he's going to get fired, not if. Is he going to get fired today, tomorrow, middle of the season, next off season? John Mara's he's just picking the time in the timeline. It's pathetic. They're a complete disgrace. John Mara is an embarrassment of an owner. He's reached James Dolan territory. I know that sounds harsh, considering they've won 2 Super Bowls.
He's there.
That's in the past.
Yeah,
he's there.
Yeah, he's there. I mean, they've lost 100 games in the last decade. I mean, you're there in the NFL.
Yeah, that's so difficult to do in the NFL. I mean, there's most teams have had their run. Even if you think of the bad teams from 10 years ago, like it's hard to even remember because it shifts so often. Like there's the few consistent franchises like the Patriots, Steelers, Ravens, Packers. But even those guys, there's all mostly because they had a great quarterback. But other than that, every team has gone through cycles over 10 years. Most teams have gone through probably 2 or 3 cycles. The Giants, their cycles have been awful, bad, mediocre, awful. Like their best case was like pretty damn bad. Yeah. Now it's just become a complete clown show.
Yeah, let's go through the clown show a little bit. I want to go through the last 48 hours or so because this whole thing has taken on a whole life of its own the last week. I mean, it starts out, yesterday they play the game, just watching it, it's meaningless. And I knew things were going to get bad when I saw a couple of the beat reporters post pictures of the parking lot where there was no one there because inside the stadium, you got about roughly 15,000 fans in the building for that game. And to me, that should be, if I'm John Mara, I walk in my building, I see 75,000 empty seats. I should say, something's not right here. Like, why don't my fans care?
Right. I mean, it's surprising. I mean, they should have probably just offered a free large Pepsi for this game. I mean, maybe that would have really drawn the fans in. Why would you go? I'm amazed anyone went. Honestly, any Giant fans listening, stop going, stop watching. If Joe Judge returns, I am not going to watch a single game next year. I mean, I'll be stubborn because I'm saying it. Even if they miraculously are good, which I'm so confident that they won't be, I can say with a certainty I will not watch them next year. Like I refuse. I'm not trying to be like a Karen, like Central Park Karen. No, I'm not. You're not getting my money, but that's really the case. It's not even to prove a point. It's boring. Like you go, best case they win, they get lucky and win. It's not entertaining. They're horrible. And it's like one of the joys in sports that makes sports so entertaining is you don't know what's going to happen. Generally speaking, it's fun. It's exciting. Even if you're a fan of a good team, like if you were, let's say the Packers went and played a middle school league for a season. That wouldn't be exciting because they'd win 70-0 for the first quarter. You'd stop watching. So the Giants are the flip of that. They're going to be absolutely freaking terrible every year. What's the point? There's no joy because there's no variability in what they're going to do. So I refuse. It is kind of out of principle, not that it's going to change anything because John Mara is just a stubborn prick. I really believe it's arrogance and stubbornness. We're going to do it my way, the Giants way. We don't fire 3 coaches in a row after 2 years. Okay, you prick. So you're going to fire 2 coaches after 2 years, and then this coach is going to be after 3 years. Good job. Continuity. Now we're going to have it's so illogical that and the fact that I would love to be a fly on the wall at these meetings with Joe Judge, with him pleading his case. Hi, Joe. So you went 4-13. We passed for -10 yards in week 17, and you ran 2 quarterback sneaks that looked like something a middle school team would do. What are you going to do to stay? Sprints. All right, you're on. You got a 3rd year.
Yeah,
it's a freaking joke. Yeah. It's such a joke.
Yeah, we haven't gotten into the best of his stuff yet. I mean, let's go to right now. The next thing on the timeline here is the reporters get in the stadium. And then we see that Dave Gettleman is down on the sideline with his family hanging out for the game. He's basically getting the victory lap. And I want to point out here a couple of things here. In his time as the Giant general manager, he went 19-46. This roster is a much less talent than when he got here on it. He had less than $2 million in cap room for next season. They couldn't field a full 46-man roster yesterday. They didn't have enough money to pay everyone that under the cap. Yeah, he's getting, the dog and pony show, while Jerry Reese goes 91-85, wins 2 Super Bowls, and he's fired in season. At that point, I'm just sitting there. I'm watching this thing, reading all the tweets. I'm really sitting there. I'm going, what the hell's going on out
here? Oh, man. I genuinely laugh in these songs. It's so funny. When you say all these things out loud, it's laughable. Like, you can't defend any of it. Not a single piece of it. Gettleman, it's not an exaggeration to say he did as bad of a job as possible, given the circumstances. The Giants were very bad when he got there. There's no denying that. I don't want to give him the benefit of the doubt and you know how people theorize that he was basically forced to keep Eli and build around Eli? I don't think that's a fair assumption. But he took the job. He's a grown man. No one held a gun to his head and said, you must take this job and keep Eli. But let's just assume that they forced him to keep Eli. He still did as bad of a job as possible, even if you give him that assumption, starting with the Saquon pick, and then everything went downhill from there. Basically, every single signing he made was awful. I mean, I could rattle off the list. It's well established that Gettleman's the worst GM in team history, one of the worst GMs in sports history to get a 4-year tenure. But it's such a slap in the face. I've said this before to every fan, the media, even the players. I mean, I'm sure they don't feel that strongly about Gettleman. Some of them probably like him because he brought them on, but the guy did nothing positive in his tenure here. And it's that mentality of, well, he's our friend. And you know what? I have to say, this is going to sound harsh. It doesn't matter that he had cancer. It mattered. Let me rephrase. I feel horrible for him. I'm happy he's healthy. I'm happy for him and his family. That's irrelevant to his job performance. If you get sick, that's not a carte blanche. You never have to be accountable for your job. He's healthy. And even if he wasn't healthy, let him retire. He's healthy. And even if he wasn't, I'm sorry, that's horrible. But we all have jobs. If you're bad at your job, you don't have to publicly fire him and shame him. You don't have to give him a freaking retirement party, letting him take pictures on the field with his family because he was sick 2 years ago. I mean, it's outrageous. I'm probably sounding like cold-hearted, but I would like just to fully explain. Those two things are separate. You can have sympathy for him because he was sick. That's sad, but that doesn't mean you give him 4 years to do the worst job in team history and then never hold him accountable because he was sick once. I'm sorry. Someone needs to say it because I've seen on Twitter, he's a Giants man. He had cancer. That's not relevant to what we're saying. He sucked at his job. And you know what? He actually comes across as a smug prick too. So I don't see why we as fans in the media, because he's friends with the owner, have to sit there and watch him put his hand around his wife and his kids and take pictures. He F off, go to Cape Cod, and honestly, just never show your face in MetLife again. You're a disgrace, Gettleman.
Yeah,
but other than that, we could be friends.
I want to point this out though, because my issue is more the fact that like he did the worst job possible of like a general manager in New York sports this side of John Idzik, and he gets like the dog and pony show. He gets to have all his moments, like the victory lap, basically for his 4 years on the job. Whereas Jerry Reese wins 2 Super Bowls, has been in the organization for 23 years when he gets fired in the middle of the season because he put in a plan that the owner approved to bench Eli Manning and got the heat for and got fired in season, despite winning 2 Super Bowls, having a winning record as the general manager. That bothers me a lot.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm actually happy you brought that up. It points to John Mara being a spineless coward because he wanted to scapegoat Jerry Reese and Ben McAdoo because the fans got upset that they benched Eli. I got it that fans were upset about that. Maybe it wasn't the right way to do it. Geno Smith, you knew what he was. He's a solid. I actually think Geno's a solid backup, but that's a different story. Mara's a spineless coward. It's been proven time and time again. Reese had a very good run. Anyone that tries to discredit his role in the first Super Bowl is just not being fair. Like, yeah, Ernie, of course, he helped put the team together. Reese had an unbelievable draft that year. I think Ahmad Bradshaw in the 7th round, Kevin Boston like the 4th or 5th. Reese was a great GM for a while. Things started going south. His time probably was up. It was it was fair to get rid of him. They didn't have, if you're going to keep the historically inept GM and let him retire, I agree that against firing Reese mid-season looks horrible. The only other thing is I'm not making light of Gettleman being sick, but the only other difference is Gettleman was sick and Jerry Reese wasn't. But again, Mara didn't want to face the heat for Eli being benched, so he just put the onus on Reese and McAdoo. Also, Coughlin's retirement was bullshit too. I think Coughlin, I don't know Coughlin, obviously. He was, if you remember, he refused to shake John Mara's hand when he at his retirement ceremony. He probably was pissed because he thought John Mara's being a coward. He probably would have respected Mara more if Mara said, you know what, Tom, you're done, you're fired. We'll still give a press conference because you're a historically great coach for us, but don't lie and call it a retirement. That's so spineless. Like, no one does that. If you're done, if your time and your role is done, you're done. Nobody, it's not disrespectful to fire someone in professional sports. It sucks sometimes. Like Brian Flores didn't get a fair shake. And God, we go on that a lot, but people get fired. It happens. It's as long as you don't like disparage the person on the way out the door.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to put a pin in that one. We'll go back to Gettleman again a little bit later, but I want to go now to the infamous sneak call here where we watched the game. I mean, I'll admit, I was not watching the game at all. I was putting the red zone. I said, okay,
neither was I.
I said, I put red zone on. I don't even know what's going on in this game. And all of a sudden, red zone comes on. They show this horrendous sequence there where late in the first half, they're down inside their own 5-yard line. It's 3rd and 9. And Joe Judge has the Giants line up in victory formation, is running a sneak to set up, give his team more room for a punt. And I remember the red zone, like Scott Hansen, the host, was just openly mocking the Giants. Like Twitter was mocking the Giants. Everywhere I watched the highlights of this basically said, this is like the most disgraceful thing I've ever seen in the league. And to me, like when I see that, if I was John Mara, like he would not finish the game. He would have been fired on the spot. Like the fact that he actually had a job the rest of the game is mind boggling to me.
I totally agree. It's an embarrassment to the sport. I mean, I saw Dan Orlovsky today said there were like 3,000 3rd and 8 plays this year, something like that. Obviously a very high number. I'm sure you can guess how many plays of those were a QB sneak. One. I mean, there might have been one of those in NFL history, and in that scenario, 3rd and 8. When you compare that to his introductory press conference where he said we're going to be relentless and treat, it was such an absurd quote. It sounded, he knows how to say it like a fascinating, intriguing quote. He said like we're going to treat every play like it has a history of its own. Like that attitude's great. I love that attitude. Yeah, treat every play like it could be your last, and it could be a big play. And he couldn't have done the more polar opposite. He didn't even trust his quarterback to hand off the ball. and not like, what, are you freaking kidding me? That even a handoff would have pissed me off, because in today's NFL, you try and drive down the field, you try to make a big play. You don't just hate. I mean, I actually don't care that much because I haven't watched them in months. Or like, I mean, maybe I shouldn't admit that as you have me on as the diehard Giants fan, but I mean, that's obvious. How could you watch them? But I still get mad when I hear these things because they're keeping him. Like he gave up. He doesn't understand. You don't punt. You don't play to punt in 2022. That's not how football is played anymore. It hasn't been played that way in 30 years. Troy Aikman and John Elway knew they were throwing the ball pretty far down the field. Like people have been able to throw the ball far down the field for decades now. Judge, you freaking clown! You don't play for the punt. It's the most pathetic mindset, and it's so cowardly for someone that just likes to get up on this podium and act tough and say we ain't some clown show. You literally are exactly a clown show. You coach like you're scared of your own shadow. And he should never get a job in the NFL again when you combine his lack of overall understanding of football game management and just his lying. Yeah. Players are calling us praying to come back. No, they're not. That's a lie.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up his quote last week. I do have that one still, so I got to pull that one again.
This ain't
let's hear it.
Fights on the sidelines. This ain't some clown show organization or something else.
First of all, you cannot be taking shots at the other team, and you just got skunked 29-3 by the Bears, who had fired their coach after the season. That's one thing. And then you go play that team next week, you lose them 22-7. What's it say about you?
Exactly. I mean, in the professional world, anytime I've worked with a lot of people, anytime someone is in a position where they need to defend themselves, or anytime someone puts another person down in order to make themselves look better, that person's a scumbag and they have no leg to stand on. They can't stand on their own merits. This ain't some clown show. We're not fighting on the sidelines. Ron Rivera is a respected coach that's been around for decades. He's had a lot of success. Don't criticize any other coach, but especially not him. I wish Ron Rivera just decked him in the face after the game. He would have beat the hell out of him. It would have been great. And maybe Barrow would have fired Judge after that. But yeah, and then you go lose to them in embarrassing fashion. Makes it that much worse.
Yeah, and you mentioned the embarrassing fashion here. The Giants did some historic stuff while you were not watching the games. I mean, they lost their last 6 games by double digits. They are outscored 163-56 over that span. And it's the longest streak in team history, which, I mean, this goes to show you. And a week yesterday where the Jaguars upset the Colts, knocking out of the playoffs. The Lions played hard and beat the Green Bay Packers. The Texans gave the Titans a big fight. The Jets played hard against the Bills. The Giants have basically packed it in for about a month and a half. And the only game they won was because the Eagles completely inept in MetLife a couple weeks ago.
Exactly. I mean, I kept up. I read a lot. After every game, I obviously check the box score, read the articles. I peruse Twitter, like obsessively praying that there'll be the announcement that Gettleman and Judge are fired, even though I know with 100% certainty it's never happening. That's the other. Judge keeps talking about how hard everybody's fighting, and there's the few defenders I see of Judge on Twitter say you could tell the team's fighting hard. How? They're getting blown out every single game. Like, I mean, I think people think if the players aren't literally lying down on the field, that means they're playing hard. Football, it would be very difficult for it to be obvious you're not trying, even though the score and the results should be a decent indicator that they might not be giving 100%. Kenny Golladay, I heard he apparently didn't lay out for a couple of passes he could have.
Oh yeah, he did.
There's no evidence. There's nothing about the way they're playing to indicate that they're playing hard. I mean, but I will say Judge is so inept and the scheme is so bad that the score is also a reflection of just how bad they are. Maybe they are giving effort and they're just so terrible. That's certainly possible. But either way, there's no good way to spin it. Oh, well, they're trying hard, but even though they're trying 100%, we're losing by 2 or 3 touchdowns every game. That's great. So just now we need to get good players and make them try hard and a good scheme while we're at it. So Judge has the trying hard part. He doesn't actually, but unbelievable.
Yeah, and well, now we get to today. Now there's a fun start today because obviously we had the release this morning that Gettleman is retiring, and they say all these kind words about it, and then they don't bother making Gettleman talk to the media. So Gettleman basically gets to duck out of the building having to address the press since training camp. So he doesn't get to run and hide from this disaster.
Of course, I mean that's the Giants' way. He's our friend.
Yeah.
So he's barely ever talked to the press. I mean, when he did, he mocked the use of computers. Remember, we said computer folk on the analyst. Oh no, he actually, we've hired more computer folks. That's when he realized that you might want to use a computer. But back in the day when they were defending Saquon, he said computer folk. That's the smugness. He's like, that's what I love, is the love, hate, whatever you want to call it. All of their insanely dumb moves. Phil Fried actually mentioned this. They were so like certain and arrogant about it when everyone was when everyone was correctly stating that it was obviously bad, like picking Saquon second, Daniel Jones sixth, just the list goes on and on. They all predictably failed terribly. But it doesn't really matter that much, but it's so much worse when like you have a guy who's smug and arrogant about it, and then he gets to disappear into the sunset. You don't get to confront him and say, well, I thought, well, how did it work out drafting the gold jacket running back that was touched by the hand of God, and Daniel Jones I fell in full bloom love with because of a freaking exhibition game? What's going on with those moves? It would just be a little cathartic. They should just honestly put David Gettleman at the podium and let everyone throw tomatoes at him just for 10 minutes. That would make us all feel better.
I would just honestly prefer, like, especially after how much shit he gave Kim Jones over the years, like if she got a chance to like ask him like 4 questions in a row with him having to answer them, because like she was like call his bullshit from day one. I gave her credit for that.
Yeah, she was on it. There was not that many. There was a few writers out there, but I mean, I'm sure the media game, they have to be somewhat cordial because their access and jobs are dependent on a relationship with the team. But I give her credit as well. She was on it. And he's a jerk and he sucks at his job. I mean, can you tell I love him and like we're best friends? We're gonna hang out in Cape Cod together this summer.
Yeah,
it bothers me that the lack of accountability it's really embarrassing. But that John Mayer's a spineless coward, and honestly, it feels good to say it. I hope one day this gets to him.
Yeah. And next part of the process here, Joe Judge apparently had a brief like 5-minute meeting with John Mara in the morning, and then he went and talked to the team, and the team had like, he basically said, told him like, basically talking like, I'm going to be here next year, not saying as much. And then the Giants, in their infinite wisdom, decided to send all the players out to talk to the media without giving them any heads up on what's going on with the coach. So of course, everybody, whether it's Daniel Jones, Evan Ingram, Leonard Williams, the first question everybody's mouth is like, what do you do about Joe Judge? Should Joe Judge be back? What about Joe Judge? Like, that's not fair. Those players have to be on the front lines on Mara hides in his office and he can't make a decision.
Of course. I mean, that's the exact move I would expect from a spineless coward. Let the players handle it, and they'll take the fall. I will say, I mean, this doesn't matter at all. The Giants players all see it like they have a bunch of likable players. I want Daniel Jones to be good. I want Leonard Williams to be good. I want like Logan Ryan. They all like seem to take accountability and want to be good. I don't think like they're just not, but and I see like the media asks them like what they think about Joe Judge. Their answers couldn't be more meaningless. None of them are going to throw the coach under the bus. They have to play for him next year probably, or if not, if they say something bad, they'll get cut and lose out on millions of dollars. I don't understand. I mean, it's you can't even begin to create a logical explanation for how the Giants have handled this situation. I actually foolishly thought the Giants were going to do the right thing last night and fire Judge. I was certain they were going to keep him. And then with the sneaks and the rants and all the nonsense and just him being ripped universally across the media and fans showing up wearing clown outfits, like how could you possibly keep that guy? Sure enough, it looks like they're going to do it. And I mean, when you contrast that with the Dolphins firing a legitimately good coach and even the Vikings, Mike Zimmer, it was his time for sure. He's a solid coach. I mean, he's not a disgrace, but it was his time. But I mean, and the Giants can't come to the conclusion that this complete joke of a coach, it should have been a quick, easy decision. Shouldn't have even been something they contemplated. But here we are, full day into Black Monday.
Yeah, I think you're right. You mentioned obviously Brian Flores. He wins 19 games with the Dolphins in 2 years, and that team was a dumpster fire when he got there. And he had a 8-game winning streak in season after getting off to that awful start. He loses his job, but that might be more of the Dolphins being bad as an organization. But that's one thing. Mike Zimmer been to the playoffs multiple times, took the Vikings in the NFC Championship game, gets fired. Matt Nagy took the Bears to the playoffs twice. He gets fired. Joe Judge 10-23 in 2 years and is sinking like a balloon down the stretch here. All of a sudden, we have to debate about this. To me, if I'm a Giant fan and it's not blatantly obvious that he needs to be replaced, that's a problem.
Exactly. It's if they fired him tomorrow, I'd still be like, this was an upsetting, very like I'm not confident things are going to change. It shouldn't have even been a debate, and I really think this all relates to John Mara being stubborn and thinking his way is the best, and he wants to prove that the Giants' way is better. Because we don't fire coaches after 2 years, 3 times in a row. Well, you don't, but you hire terrible coaches every single time, and you assembled a terrible roster every single year, and it's an absolute disgrace. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. It's Joe Judge. It's gonna be one of those eras we just look back on eventually if we ever get to the other side to a new era of good Giants football again. But Joe Judge will go down in the annals of horrendous coaching. He actually reminds me of Matt Patricia a lot. Just Patricia wasn't as bombastic, but he was obviously bad immediately. At least I think it was just so obvious right off the get go. It was just obvious. There's certain coaches that you could just tell right away. And that he managed to get through the second full season, and everyone was shocked they didn't fire him. But it was like the Lions organization, their front office just dug in and said, we've got to make this guy work. He preached culture, he preached setting the right mindset, and he's also a Belichick disciple. So they gave him the 3rd year. Sure enough, they stunk again. They fired him in the middle of the season. It's actually like a spitting replica of the Joe Judge situation, in my opinion, down to the Belichick link. And I don't, if Judge makes it, I don't think he'll make it through the full 3rd year. He'll do something. He'll just keep embarrassing himself, and Mara just have to pull the plug.
Yeah, the thing that bothers me is this whole revolving door fallacy. I know SNY's Ralph Bacchiano is talking about it a lot, where John Mara, you mentioned time, says, like, I don't want to be the team that's firing the coach every 2 years, especially when John Mara's only makes the final call of the coaches. So everyone that fails, a reflection on him. And we've heard the myriad supports like, oh, he thinks he's found his Bill Belichick. He found the next Bill Parcells with this guy. It's so stupid. The thing that's wrong with his philosophy is like, yes, firing coaches every 2 years is not ideal, but if they all suck, they all suck. They got to go. It's like
exactly
you're compounding the mistake by just, like you said, we're going to give him 3 years instead of 2. Like all you're doing is dig yourself a deeper hole for the next guy to try and fix.
Exactly. It honestly Mara claims he cares so much. I don't know if he does anymore, because if he cared this much, like unless he's obviously not very bright when it comes to football. I don't know if he's bright at all, but I mean, I don't know him well, but if he knew, it's so obvious Judge is a bad coach. I think his mentality is he's probably terrible, but on the 1% chance I'm right, let's just keep him, because then I'll look like a genius. But if he cared so much, you wouldn't bank on that 1% chance. You'd say, you know what, this 99% chance he's awful, it's time to move on. He's proven it. In my mind, he's 100% terrible. But I'm just trying to think of any sort of logic to give Mara to get in his mind and figure out what he's possibly thinking. Because I don't know. I don't know. It makes no sense. And yeah, I found my Belichick. No, you don't find your. I hate when people say the McVay. I will say actually, Sean McVay's tree looks great right now. But mostly when you try and replicate another coach, it's not going to work, especially Bill Belichick. Belichick's one of a kind. His assistants without fail are awful. Like almost every single one of them are terrible. So I would never be like, if another hot shot is like Brian Flores is actually good. So that he's one of the exceptions. Yeah. But you can't just say, I found my guy. Well, no, you didn't. He sucks. Move on.
Yeah, you do need to move on. And the thing right now is, as of right now, we're going to operate under the assumption that Joe Judge is staying, and right now, to the Giants' credit, and they deserve very little at this point, but to their credit, it sounds like the public perception is wean them off of just promoting Kevin Abrams. They're actually going to go outside the organization for a hire. They have a list of a bunch of guys out there, and from what I've seen, let's stick some decent candidates on there. But the problem I have with this is, like, what respectable candidate is going to look at the situation where you have to take on this head coach, and I know that Judge, like Mara may high on, like, oh, well, we're going to let the GM, have some say on Judge's future. That's a dumb philosophy. We'll get that in a second. But you can look at that where you basically saddle with a bad coach. You have no cap room. You have no talent on the roster. You have to fix your entire offensive line and overhaul a bunch of positions. You have a quarterback situation you don't know the answer to. You have 2 top 10 picks, which is nice, but there's just so much work to do. It's like, like, what makes this job attractive when you can't even pick your coach?
Nothing, not a single thing. I don't care about the two first round picks. I mean, like you said, we don't know about Daniel Jones. The line is a mess. Both lines are a mess. And just the organization is, I think the Giants GM opening, if all teams had a GM vacancy, I would say the Giants would be the least desirable. Well, you can make the arguments the least desirable based on roster and cap space, but the biggest factor is the stupidity of the organization and the front and the ownership. Like, why? I agree. There's literally nothing that makes this team desirable. Take 2 first-round picks, yippee! Like, it doesn't matter. I mean, I would say that they're the least desirable, worst job in the NFL right now. I mean, actually, from a job security standpoint, it doesn't matter how you do. Like, you just have to befriend Mara. I think if you take John Mara out for a beer and like you tell some funny jokes, you'll have your job for at least 4 years. And if you suck, he'll let you retire. So I guess from that standpoint, that's the appeal. You have a lot of job security if you befriend John. But in terms of if you want to be successful in your job and put on a winning product, it's a terrible, terrible position to have.
Yeah, I had to say, I was talking to our friend Phil Fryer earlier. I said, this whole situation right now where the coach is still hanging on here by a thread, and I don't know I feel like the whole thing is going to be the cop out of like, oh, let's let the GM decide. And conveniently, I hired a GM who likes Joe Judge, who's going to stay. That's great. But to me, this sort of gives you peak 2013 Jets energy here, where they fired Mike Tannenbaum, they kept Rex Ryan, they brought in John Idzik, and that became a disaster that basically set the stage the next decade of misery for the Jets. So, I mean, you guys are right there. That's a problem. You don't want to be in that spot.
We're there. We're right there. You're right. It's been this cycle. I've said this a couple of years ago. I don't remember when I've said it on this podcast. To not have the GM and coach in sync on literally starting in the same timeline is only bad. There's nothing good that can come from it because it's so predictable what's going to happen. They're gonna if they hire an outside GM and keep Judge, which seems likely, they're gonna suck again. Then you have to fire Judge. Then the GM is borderline on the hot seat. He gets another year, at least another. Well, with the Giants, he gets 20 years, but let's throw that aside. Year 2, they'll probably stink again because it's the Giants. Then you're a coach that's in year 1, a GM that's had 2 bad years. Now he's on the hot seat, but the coach can't be on the hot seat because he's only going to year 2. It's this vicious cycle that they just refuse to fix, but it's so easy to fix right now. Joe Judge is begging that his actions make it seem like he doesn't want to be employed. Like his actions are begging to get fired, but they just refuse to do it and just do the obvious common sense thing and get the GM and get a GM, let him make the decision. It shouldn't even be a factor in the interview. It should be clean slate. He sucks. And Nikki said this in your podcast. I've texted this about him, that they're terrified of being wrong and firing or cutting someone too soon. It doesn't matter. If you happen to get rid of someone too soon, oh well, he's not going to be Bill Belichick. That's certain. Even if he is, you got unlucky. He's shown so much evidence that he sucks that if he happens to go to another organization and be the historically great coach, that's life. That's going to happen sometimes. It's not going to happen in this instance, but if it does, oh well, you have to move on when someone gives you years of evidence that they're terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple as, you know what, like I kind of say the joke earlier here that, like, I don't know if you're a big Seinfeld guy.
Not really, no.
There was an episode of Seinfeld where George works for the Yankees, where George basically gets offered a job by the Mets and says, like, you have to get yourself fired. So he's doing all these ridiculous things, like dragging the World Series trophy around his car, insulting his bosses, trying to get himself fired. He can't get himself fired. So I think that's sort of what's going. Like, I was joking, that's what's happening here, but he's just keep in his job.
It sounds like it. Can you imagine if the Giants were the team that hired Urban Meyer?
Yeah.
They never would have, because he's just not the type of guy they'd hire. But I'm convinced he really wanted to get fired by the Jaguars. But he probably would have been, who knows what he'd have been doing to get fired. He'd probably be at strip clubs, like live streaming, like the morning of a game. Yeah. And Mara would be still struggling to fire him. Yeah.
And I just, I feel bad for the Giant fans because, like, you're going down the road I went down. It's not a fun road to be on. And you just sit there and you're watching this like slow motion train wreck. You're just going, nope. You see the train going off the cliff. You can't stop it, but you're on the ride. It's not fun.
What was that clip from?
It was from the Muppets.
Oh, okay. That's a good analogy. The Muppets are always coming in handy. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you feeling bad for us. You've gone through the same thing for years with the Jets. I've really gotten to the point. I don't care in that. I mean, I don't watch anymore. Like I watched the first probably 8 or 9 games. And even then, I just barely paid attention. But now it's gotten to a point. Like I said, if Judge is the coach, I won't even consider turning them on next year. And it's sad because I really did love watching them and following them and talking to my friends about them. It's so much negative energy when you talk about them because there's nothing good. It's, well, who are we going to fire next? What's our offseason plan? By October at the latest, like November maybe. But they're out of every single season. So yeah, it's just going to be the same story every year until, I don't know. And there's no until. It's just going to keep going, as depressing as that sounds.
Yeah. Once again, I'm going to sort of wrap it up here. Just point out one thing here. It's like the fact that, again, after that rant last week from Mr. Judge, where it reminded me so much of the Idzik press conference in the middle of 2014, got himself fired, had the Jet fans buying the plane, flying over the facility. The fact that we have that. And then this week you have the sneaks and he might keep his job.
Oh my God.
Like good old Mike Francesa.
Yeah.
It's actually hard to believe. Like the Gettleman stuff was very hard to believe too. It's pretty much equally indefensible. Like Gettleman going into year 3 was indefensible. Year 4 was, again, you start to wonder like what blackmail he has over Mara. Judge, the Joe Judge stuff. It's like he condensed that timeline of making it unbelievable that he's keeping his job into like a 5-week span. Like 6 weeks ago, if he just finished the season bad, I would have been like, he should be fired, but I'm not going to go nuts because it's 2 years and they were ravaged by injuries. But he made so many mind-bogglingly dumb statements, decisions. It's pathetic, and it's hard to believe. But I mean, that you have to put the Giants in the same group as the Lions, the Jets, the Jags. They are. Everyone sees it now. It took, like I said earlier, it took people longer because they won a Super Bowl relatively recently, but Joe Judge, the fact that he used this ain't some clown show, like he literally used the exact perfect term to describe what the Giants are. They are a clown show. It's laughable. Like yeah, I think sad laughing, like the sad clown.
Yeah, I think it's a more concise definition of what the Giants are right now.
They stink.
Right there.
They really do. Oh man, it's so upsetting. But I mean, on the bright side, there is no bright side. We're gonna stink for a long time. Just gonna be the same story.
This is the Isaiah Thomas New York Knicks.
It really is. I said that. I've been saying that for a long time. It's gotten to that level. I mean, it's like letting Gettleman retire and take pictures on the field of his family is one final smack in the face to us Giants fans. Like I really do think it would have been cathartic if they had a press conference and said, "Look, this was a mistake. Gettleman, we respect him. He had a great career." I would have loved it if they just ripped him, but I know it's not realistic. People don't do that. If they just said it didn't work, we're not happy with the on-field product, we're letting him go because of poor job performance. Done. I'd be like, okay, thank you for acknowledging that. Like, I feel better. I'm gonna go back and live my life. But no, retiring, like, F off Mara, F off Gettleman, F off Judge. Like, you guys all should just be like banned from participating in the NFL. It's a disgrace. It's a complete disgrace.
It is, because again, I'll make as my last point here is like the fact that, again, those two things, the rant, the blowouts, and the quitting on the field with that punt, like to me, that is the equivalent, the modern day age of the, you remember the Joe Pisarcik fumble in the 70s that got the Giants to bring in George Young? That's the equivalent of that play. And instead of firing the coach, they're keeping the coach. That tells you all you need to know about the state organization.
Keeping him, and he's probably going to have input on who the next GM is. So he's getting more power. 4-13 gets you more power. Oh man, it's a complete laughing stock. But on the bright side, for your podcast, there will be more entertaining content with us Giants fans ranting this time next year.
Yeah, because I was wondering where the sufferings have come from for a week with this, because it feels like the Jets are slowly going on the way up. The Mets are become the new Yankees. They're spending all the money, and the Knicks are showing some confidence. The Giants are going to be the source of the suffering.
Yeah, what the heck? If you told us 10, 15 years ago, the Giants would be a clown organization, the Yankees would be frugal, the Mets would have a hedge fund owner that outspends everybody, we would be like, that's not real. Just stop lying.
Yeah. And the Knicks would actually show confidence.
Yeah, the Knicks actually made the playoffs and like had a chance to win some games. Yeah, it's bizarro world. And the Nets are like have all the superstars in Brooklyn. Bizarro world of sports, but
yeah,
hey,
it is a bizarro world. Justin, thanks all the time. Really appreciate it. Before I let you go, if you want to follow you on the social media streets, how can I do that?
Just on Instagram, I am at _ Justin F. Diaz. Thanks, Mike. This was a blast. Keep doing your thing. Your podcast is great. It's very entertaining to listen to. Thank you.